The Coin series of games by GMT is a fascinating blend of history, politics, and warfare of various kinds. We thought it would be a good idea to provide you with a guide so that you can select the best coin experience for you, and we will look to do that in an innovative way here on Legendary Tactics. Now today's video is going to be a bit different. This video is not designed to be watched from beginning to end as usual. We want to try and make it more interactive for you, because we're old enough to remember those choose your own adventure books, or maybe you have tried those shows on Netflix where you pick the path the story goes. In this case, we're going to ask you a series of questions, and based on your answers, we're going to direct you to the timestamp in the description to get you to the next step in the process. So if you're viewing this on a computer, make sure that the screen is not maximized so you can view the description at the same time, and we'll give this a try. First of all, a little introduction. At the time we are publishing this video, the Coin series has 10 volumes. They have covered many different conflicts in many different parts of the world and at many different times in history. Each game combines politics, history, warfare, resource management, diplomacy, among other dimensions. They are relatively easy to learn but difficult to master because of all the different moving parts. But there is an incredible gaming experience awaiting anyone that dives in, and this guide is to help those of you who are new to the Coin series, as well as those who are already familiar but who are maybe looking for their next title. Let's start with the basics. While every coin game can be played solitaire with the help of bot flowcharts, there are some games that are designed with a certain number of players in mind. How many players will you likely be playing your coin game with? If you are looking to experience the extent of the evolution of this series of games, Legendary Tactics recommends Gandhi, the Decolonization of India. While there is a lot that is similar to other coin games, because this game features two factions that are non-violent, the game feels very innovative and different. For once, strong-arm tactics are not necessarily your best move, and you have to learn a whole bunch of new operations and special activities that differentiate this game greatly from other titles, but it is well worth the time investment of learning this unique game. Now the next question pertains to whether you're looking for the quote-unquote true coin experience, or if you're open to something different, especially if you have played other coin titles and you're looking for a bit more variety. Please click on the timestamp down below if that's what you'd like. If you are looking for a game with higher complexity that recreates some ancient history, you can't go far wrong with Pendragon. This game tells a grand, epic story of the British Isles at the end of the Roman Empire. As the Romans begin to weaken and their infrastructure starts to crumble, it makes room for the other factions to battle for control. This game is at least as complicated as another coin title, Fire in the Lake, but because it is a further evolution of the Coin series, I think it just feels more intimidating from a rules perspective. Fire in the Lake was very similar in many ways to A Distant Plain, and those games were much closer in the Coin series development. Pendragon definitely has its roots in Coin, but tells its own story. And even though there are shorter scenarios, this game is really meant to be played from beginning to end as a complete campaign. For fans of ancient European history, there are 2 titles to choose from in the Coin series. To get to which one might be better for you, please answer this question. Do you enjoy games of higher or lower complexity? If you want to play a coin game with 3 players and no flowcharts to handle the AI player, Legendary Tactics recommends All Bridges Burning. The game is the 10th volume in the series and the first to offer a 3-player experience. It recreates the Finnish Civil War of 1917 and 18, and your 3 factions are the Senate, the Moderates, and the Reds. The mechanics from the original coin games are altered fairly substantially to allow for 3 players, but I think it works brilliantly. I think one honorable mention deserves a bit of space here. Liberty or Death, the 5th volume in the series, which recreates the American Revolution, is a 4-player game. However, the French faction begins with no pieces on the board until sometime around the halfway mark. As a result, the flowchart for the French player is pretty easy to run, so you might want to consider this title as well. The next question is, what sort of scale are you looking for? Are you looking for something more small scale, maybe something geared a little bit more towards beginners and more accessible? Or are you looking for something grander, either medium or large scale? If you are looking for an option for a game that recreates ancient history without a lot of rules overhead, Falling Sky would be a great choice. Falling Sky attempts to recreate Caesar's incursion into Gaul and the various factions involved there. It's a lot more like a war game than the other titles, and there will be lots of casualties. The diplomacy feels different as well, but it's not overly complex. The Germans, who are an automated faction, might be the trickiest part to deal with, but they're not that bad. If you like ancient history and a claustrophobic wargame, this one is for you. The next question that I have is, do you prefer a war game that has elements of politics, or do you prefer a political game that has elements of war? For those with less time on their hands, or perhaps as an introduction to the coin system, Cuba Libre is a great option and is our recommendation here at Legendary Tactics. I've heard Cuba Libre explained as a knife fight in a phone booth, and that is a very fair comment. There are 4 factions battling it out over a total of 13 spaces, and there isn't much room to maneuver as Cuba is a pretty narrow island. But the full game event deck is shorter than the rest, and the lack of options don't hurt the strategic options available. This is as small and simple as coin can get, at least so far. The next question I have for you is, do you like to have a game that's much more of a free-for-all, or would you like a game where there are some natural alliances that take place because of the game situation? Andean Abyss, the game that started it all, is a true free-for-all, with the sense of chaos that carries forward through every game in the rest of the series. There are no front lines, and everything is intertwined. Alliances, such as they are just temporary and makes for a cutthroat game. The four factions in Andean Abyss are the Colombian government, the AUC, who were paramilitaries hired by wealthy landowners, the FARC, which were the communist rebels, and the cartels, who were mainly interested in growing and distributing drugs to the United States. Although the government and the AUC share a weak affinity, each faction has their own game to play and their own course to run. So if you are looking for a medium-scale cutthroat game, you might as well begin with the game that started it all, Andean Abyss. So, you are someone who is interested in events that happened a long time ago. The Coin series has covered counterinsurgencies that have taken place all over the world, but so far its coverage of ancient counterinsurgencies has been limited to Europe and North America. What region's history interests you most? There is one coin game of the 10 that is uniquely optimized as a two-player game, and this game is Colonial Twilight. Colonial Twilight attempts to recreate the French-Algerian War and introduced a lot of innovative mechanics to make the coin system work for two players, and these mechanics, for the most part, work very well. Because there are only two players in the game, diplomacy has obviously been reduced as a factor, and so the game feels a little bit different, perhaps more driven by the mechanics of the coin system than in other games. Colonial Twilight is an intense, interesting, and fun back and forth that will allow you to play a coin game against a single opponent without any fiddly flowcharts. One of the main aspects of the Coin series is history. This is a chance to revisit the past and stand in the shoes of various factions that took part in a counterinsurgency. Where would you say your interest lies as far as history is concerned? Do you prefer modern history or ancient history? Here, we are defining modern history as anything from the year 1900 onward, and ancient history as anything that happened before 1899. Go to the description and click on the appropriate timestamp indicated here. Fire in the Lake is very ambitious in its scope. It aims to cover the war in Vietnam from 1964 until 1972. This conflict was very complex, and the game reflects that. The four factions are the United States, the Viet Cong, the North Vietnamese Army, and the Vietnamese government, also known as the ARVN. While still rooted in the coin system's mechanics, this game comes across very much as a war game. There are big army battles as well as the usual counterinsurgency activities. There are special forces, leaders, bombardments, and other things that you would associate with a war game. However, this game really is a hybrid and is endlessly fascinating. It is highly recommended as long as you can put up with some additional rules overhead and handle the wide range of strategic options available. An honorable mention here is Falling Sky. Although it deals with ancient history, the feel of the game is much more along the lines of a war game. So if you are open to another game that has back and forth battles as well as handling an element of insurgency and counterinsurgency, you may want to consider that title also. Legendary Tactics, in this case, recommends liberty or death. This game is the coin treatment of the American Revolution. The 4 factions are the French, natives, English, and colonists. Interestingly, the French player doesn't even begin the game on the board, only entering when certain conditions are met and influencing events from afar. If you only have 3 players, this is the one you will likely use the bot flowchart for. The game is an interesting treatment of the politics and factions of the time as the 13 colonies try to become the United States. If you are looking for a game that feels a little more balanced towards being a political game than a war game, A Distant Plain would be the recommendation of Legendary Tactics. There's a lot of brinkmanship in a game of A Distant Plain. The 4 factions, the Taliban, the warlords, the Afghan government, and the coalition have goals that are either interlocking or completely opposed to each other. This game depicts the wheels within wheels aspect so well. Everything you do helps or hurts someone else, and not necessarily the same faction every time. At the heart of the political dimension is the marriage of inconvenience between the coalition and the Afghan government. The relationship is portrayed so well and emerges so organically that it really gives a lot of insight into the years of conflict in Afghanistan and broader political lessons as well. So if you've clicked on the timestamp that brought you to this part of the video, we want to thank you for joining us in walking through our guide to the Coin series of games by GMT. There's a lot of fun to be had in this series of games, and we hoped our little guide helped to either introduce you to a title that you'd never tried before, or reminded you of a title that you hadn't played in a while, and hopefully can get to the table soon. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you got some value out of this, and if you did, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and comment down below. And thanks so much for watching. This is NATO with Legendary Tactics.